Banyana mona kile ha sutaba patso wena Khazisa tengwe ka thola bashanyana ba ka wena Ka ho bona we ka ba o ka ntate
I'm very happy, I'm very grateful, I'm very appreciative to be here. And for me, this is a very important occasion. We are celebrating lifelong friendships, and we are celebrating a shared history, shared experiences. Many of those experiences have been wonderful and happy, but unfortunately, some of those experiences have been sad, sorrowful, but it is a legacy that we are here to celebrate and hopefully build on and enjoy for future, for the rest of our lives.
Certainly it seems to be quite a joyous occasion this afternoon. I've heard a lot of people talk about the number of years that they haven't seen each other, and it seems like absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I'll be running the program this afternoon. Just to start with the formal proceedings, let me first welcome Her Majesty King Letsie III.
Did you say hi?
I said our Majesty. Our Majesty.
I'm hard of hearing.
Thank you very much for gracing this occasion. I think a lot will be said about the intent of this occasion this afternoon, but we really like to pay our respects to you and everybody who's accompanied you from the Mountain Kingdom. We say Dumelang, Khotsong. And then greetings to everyone here, all distinguished and eminent guests. And I'd like to say to you all, Molweni, Sanbonani, Nimasiari, Tobelang, Avsheni. Thank you. So let me start. So when my sister Yvonne asked me earlier in the week to be MC of this program, I noted that it was a day after April Fool's Day. So I still thought she was still having a hangover from the previous day. But as the conversation progressed, I realized she was serious, actually. I think just to bring some context to the occasion. Lesotho, South Africa, Southern Africa. And I looked at some of the statistics very briefly, not everybody. So, Lesotho relative to South Africa is a small country, as we know. In terms of its land mass, it's about 30,000 square kilometers, which is just about 3% the size of South Africa. All right? Its population, just over 2 million, about 3.5% the population of South Africa. Its gross domestic product is just about below 1% that of South Africa. But having said this, and why I mention this is that today, what we will do and what will be affirmed this afternoon is that despite its relative small size, Lesotho has contributed immensely and significantly to the liberation struggle of the people of South Africa and Southern Africa. The contribution that it made really far exceeds its size. And we'll attest to that as we journey through this program. And this really is a function of the hospitality and the generosity of the people of Lesotho and its leaders. You will all know that once you've been through the Mountain Kingdom, once you've settled in Lesotho, once you've been through the countryside, the beautiful countryside, once you have tasted the fresh water from the mountains, have had a cold, crisp winter night in the mountains, and in the morning greeted by the warmth of the people of Lesotho, it's something that you'll never forget in your life. So we really are indebted to the people of Lesotho for really welcoming people from all over the continent, particularly South Africa, today. So it's for this reason that we will pay homage to our King, to the kingdom, its leaders. Your kindness, His Majesty, His Majesty. Your kindness is really unparalleled. And I can say this with reverence, that I'm a beneficiary of your kindness and many others. Recently, on the occasion of your 25th wedding anniversary, you had a lovely occasion in your home village in Matsie. And those of us who were there, including Advocate Ramatlodi, witnessed the respect and the love that the Basotho people and the Lesotho people have for you. And that's really testament to who you are. So really, we are really pleased to have you this afternoon. We pray for your preservation, and we pray that God grants you the fortitude to guide and prosper your people in the way of justice and peace. Okay, so as I move on with the program, we're going to have opening remarks from one of our esteemed brothers here. So I'll just tell a quick story. When I was young, I had an uncle who was a teacher in East London and the surrounds. So whenever he'd come to visit, he would bring a copy of the Daily Dispatch, and he would share this with my father. And he would say, there's something happening. It was in the late 70s in the East London area. The activism, the trade unionism that is picking up there is on another scale. And on this newspaper, the front page, page 2, page 7, and so on, had the name Tozamile Bota. So I started reading about this hero. In 1980, when he landed in Lesotho, when we heard the news, we were so excited because I thought, oh, Lesotho is never going to be the same. When Bato was there. And more especially when we landed in Roma, indeed, things were never the same. So with those few words, I'd like to invite Batos to come to the stage with his opening remarks. Thank you.
Master of Ceremonies, Your Majesty the King, it's here, the third, Ndate Ramatlodi, the Prime Minister of the King of Bapedi, the Executive Prime Minister, not a ceremonial head of that institution. Advocate Vusi Pikoli, Honorable guests, Date Party. Thank you to the organizers of this event. I think it's over 40 years since I saw the King. We all used to gather, as the King earlier indicated, organized by Professor Ajulu at Freedom Square in Africa Hall. And he would call those who don't attend charlatans. And let me thank, first of all, those who organized and made this event possible. If I recall, I was told 2 years ago or more that the King was coming. And some committee was put together, or was to be put together, to organize this event. These people who organized this, Your Majesty, were your classmates, were your schoolmates, are your friends, and they remain so. But more than that, these were and continue to be your comrades in the struggle for freedom. This event is not just thanking the King of Lesotho, but the people of this region who contributed to our freedom during the apartheid years. And there are people here from Zimbabwe, from Swaziland, from Botswana, from Namibia, I think. All of them are welcoming and thanking you through us, Your Majesty. It was a painful period because you did not just sacrifice your people, your economy, you lost your citizens. In 1983, 82. Some of us were at Roma. When I heard over the radio that there was a raid in Maseru, I rushed with Ajulu we went to the houses of the people we knew. It was my first experience having to pick up dead bodies, take them to the mortuary, and wash them. You could not recognize some of their faces, but it is our responsibility to ensure that they were put in the right place and given the dignity they deserved. We managed, at every stage we were looking for the person you know. And in that, it was not just South Africans who were killed. It was Basotho as well. So Lesotho defiantly continued to host us, in spite of South Africa insisting that we must be thrown out. They were threatening Swaziland, they were threatening Mozambique, they were threatening Botswana, and said, we must get the hell out of this region. Because ANC was a communist. And therefore, we were creating a platform for the Soviet Union communists to come closer to South Africa. It is that sacrifice that you made on our behalf that makes us not forget the past and say thank you to you, and thank you to the Basotho people through you. I'm not the speaker. There are speakers who are going to talk more about the reality of that period. Mine is to just say that we have transitioned from that period where we were freedom fighters to where we're supposed to be free. But Your Majesty, we are still in struggle. Our people are still starving. The United States hated the communist liberation movements, as they called them. Today, when I read 2 days ago the statistics that that Lesotho's rates, tariffs, have increased. Is it to 60 or 60? From the United States. And the smallest country in the world, I suppose, so one of, is the most squeezed country economically. And part of that is because of the relationship that it has maintained with South Africa. And I'm saying that's part of the reasons. The United States has aggressively attacked, since Trump came to power, South Africa. They removed the ambassador. I read yesterday that the Consul General in Los Angeles has been checked out. But let me just finish by saying, many people don't know this. Many people think that we came home because Gorbachev chased us out of the frontline states, or the so-called communist former colonies. Not so. Reagan was the man who said to Gorbachev, I like what you are doing, but I'm tired of war. We have satellite wars everywhere as the United States. Part of the problem is communism. We have a bipolar state, or world rather. the only way to stop this is that we don't only build relationship between the Russia or the Soviet Union, but a relationship between the two Cold War leaders. Remove all your political party satellites in the world, not in South Africa, in the world. Reduce that and collapse them so that we can build a world that is in peace. And Gorbachev met with Reagan, and they called some of the leaders in the frontline states that were in question to say, for us to give Namibia its independence, for us to give Namibia its independence, ANC must be out of Angola. It must be out of, or Cuba must go back home. OR was called from Lusaka quickly, within a day, to be in Angola to get the instruction from Dos Santos that we don't have an option, that you must get out of Angola. The plane that was organized to take them from Angola to Uganda was organized very rush. The last bit of this, very interestingly, as this group was flying from Angola to Uganda, there was a young white man in that plane who was part of the cadres of the ANC. He was sitting in the middle of that plane. Nobody, some of the people didn't know him. During the flying, he stood up, walked to the cockpit, carrying whatever he was carrying. He says to the pilot, go to Johannesburg. Fly this plane to Johannesburg. So within seconds or within minutes, the plane started dropping, descending very fast, until somebody within the plane quietly, silently walked to the cockpit and managed, without being noticed, to hit this white young man down. Then the pilot started getting a relief, and the plane started ascending. And it flew finally to Uganda. And of course, as I understand, the guy was arrested. That's how risky the situation was. They were supposed to be evacuated from Angola. They were going to die from the air. And they were rescued within that particular situation. That's the situation when we were flying from Mozambique to Lesotho. We were always worried about, because you could be brought down when OR flew to bury that 42 deceased in Lesotho, it was, the ANC was really not sure what to do. But OR was a very strong person. He said, I'm going to do it. If they kill me, they kill me. But I'm flying there. And indeed, he buried the dead. Because of the government of Lesotho, because the government of South Africa was not happy with that OR must go to Lesotho and make a political slash communist statement as they perceived the ANC to be. So thank you very much, Your Excellency, Your Majesty. You were very young and handsome at that time. I'm pleased, Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. I overheard many of the women here saying, you're still the same.
Program Director, Your Majesty, comrades and friends. Following our discussion with Comrade Santo, I decided to join him in adopting the theme, Who Are We? By we, I suggest that we are referring to the generation that participated in the life and the struggle that gave birth to the liberation of Southern Africa, and finally, the demise of the apartheid regime in South Africa. We could be described in many ways. However, what singles us out is the fact that we're ready to die for the liberation of our people, in the words of Nelson Mandela at the end of the Ribonia trial. We are the small contingent that was based in Lesotho, whose open political activism found a firm platform and organizational expression in CASAS in the National University of Lesotho. In that institution, reference has been made to Freedom Square in front of Madiba Hall. And words like charlatan, Philistine, flew freely, Quisling, yes. Flew freely from the likes of Commissar Ajulo Rock, the professor. We are a contingent that blended into one fighting force on campus, as was the case throughout the country, Lesotho. Your Majesty, we are deeply indebted to Lesotho, and we are immensely grateful to Your Majesty that you could find time in your busy schedule to grace this Thanksgiving occasion. It was in the mid-1980s when Oliver Tambo, the President General of the African National Congress, declared that apartheid could not be reformed, and that the ultimate objective of the National Democratic Revolution was the destruction of apartheid and its replacement by a system based on the principles encapsulated in the Freedom Charter. At the time, we all understood that the words of the President represented our collective view. Supposing Chris Hani, Oliver Tambo, victims of the two Maseru massacres, and their comrades who lie buried in our region and in South Africa itself, supposing they were to resurrect, would they recognize us? Would they recognize the democratic South Africa of today as the country they gave their lives for? My view is that they would find an antithesis of what they envisaged and died for. They would find us still struggling to reform apartheid, whilst it is succeeding to reform us. How did we find ourselves suffocating in the vice grip of a system we are supposed to have defeated in 1994? If it ever died, it has risen like a phoenix and is gaining strength day by day, whilst we are growing weaker and weaker. Those amongst us still with a residue of consciousness are lamenting the spectre of an aborted revolution. Again, Oliver Tambo once stated that the NC could not be destroyed from outside, but that it could only be destroyed from within. Chris Hani and Oliver Tambo's deaths heralded the beginning of the demise of the ANC and its weakening. The outcome of the ANC 1991 conference in Durban consolidated the trend. At that Durban conference, about 2/3 of members of Oliver Tambo's national executive lost their seats on the NEC. That meant that the team that negotiated a political settlement negotiated without the necessary experience accumulated over 27 years of underground. The new team also left out the core of ANC technocrats who were responsible for key policy documents under the leadership of Comrade Zola Square, the then head of the Constitutional Committee of the African National Congress. This subjective factor accounts in part for the constitutional dispensation were suffocating under. The objective factor that conspired with the subjective factor was the unfavorable international balance of forces following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989. Post the 1994 democratic elections, there was a time when the democratic forces, as led by the NC, had a two-thirds majority in parliament, and therefore the opportunity to amend the constitution in favor of the constitutional principles adopted by the NC in Lusaka. This was the opportunity to correct the unfavorable CODESA outcomes. which I wrote about in an article styled, I quote, "Fatal Concessions," close quote. Here we witness a dominant subjective factor betraying the revolution. For instance, we could have amended Section 25 of the Constitution, which remains a Kilimanjaro to climb to this day. The second element of the objective factor responsible for our current predicament and problems is the rampant corruption manifesting under the NC government. The crude and vulgar form of which be more visible at a local government level. A more sophisticated form of this corruption and less visible to the uninitiated flows deep in the subterranean at a national level. The result is the massive loss of confidence in the NC and the voluntary transfer of political power to reactionary anti-change forces who have never relinquished economic power, which remained in their hands, never changed since 1994. Program Director, what is to be done? Marxists argue that it is not enough to analyze the world. The point being, what to do to change it. To answer the question, what is to be done, it is suggested that we examine the current situation to establish whether the material factors that gave rise to the struggle for liberation still exist. The answer, in my view, is a resounding yes. And perhaps even more dense in volumes, as exemplified amongst others by the massive unemployment among the youth of Southern Africa, of South Africa, of Lesotho, of our region. What this means is that the motive forces that led the struggle are still alive, and even more restive now that they have seen what the promised land is likely to look and feel like. To put it bluntly, a new revolution is underway and not yet seen or acknowledged. The next question is, who is leading it or who is likely to lead it, this new revolution? As a young political commissar in Maseru, I was once young too, like His Majesty. I once posed a question as to what would happen to the ANC once freedom was achieved. Frankly, I do not remember us coming up with any coherent answer in that class. It is my view that the answer to that question is much more urgent now than 40 years ago. In recent times, I have argued that in its current form, the ANC is unable to lead the National Democratic Revolution to its logical conclusion. By adopting the resolution on renewal, the ANC itself admits as much. It remains to be seen whether a renewed ANC under the current program will be sufficiently renewed to lead the forces of the left to genuine revolution. If the current program fails, a new organization will fill in the gap. I prefer to leave that to the future. Thank you very much.
Banyana mona kile hai sutaba pahatso wena Khafihla tengwe ka thola bashanyana ba kalla wena Khalo ho bona we ka ba o kanta te we Bantu babiyana Khafihla tengwe ka thola banna ba ho ba mabile Khalo ho bona we ka ba o kanta te we Bantu babiyana
God's name, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Bless us, O Lord, in these your gifts, which we're about to receive from your bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you. I've done my bit.
Our Majesty, don't be surprised. I get an hour because Kimukwina. This Majesty of mine here is a long separated tribal relative. Our ancestors parted somewhere around here. Some going to Botswana, others to Lesotho. I stand here supposedly to give messages of support for my countrymen who went and studied Koroma, UBLS. Let me be clear, I myself am not a UBLS alumni. I'm a National University of Lesotho alumni. I went eventually to Roma via a long route. I was PI'd from the University of Botswana and Swaziland campus in Swaziland. I was expelled from University of Botswana and Swaziland Gaborone campus. And I eventually made it to Roma. Somebody said I didn't get expelled. They don't know my history properly. I therefore struggled with how to present, because I did not want to make this speech about myself. I wanted to make it about the UBLS alumni. So how was I going to make it relevant? Of course, on my own behalf, I enjoyed being at NAM. I enjoyed the vibrant debates. ANC, PAC, ZANU, ZAPU, SWAPO, BNP, BCP. I enjoyed all that and I immersed myself in that. I enjoyed Rovers. That beautiful soccer team. Last but not least, I enjoyed the beauty of the women there. I enjoyed and I'm grateful for the fact that I got my first degree from Roma. During my studies for my post-degree, I thought I had time. I thought I would retire from the SRC scene. I thought I would now cast my eyes and find myself a life partner. Alas, that was not to be. Majara Molapo and the BNP government put an end to those ambitions. I therefore in struggling to find relevance, so that I would not steal the limelight from this occasion, which is essentially a South African and Lesotho occasion, I was gifted an answer by my ancestors. A raison d'être. No, this is not the type of French you have to excuse. A raison d'être. Your Majesty, we received a notice from Roma campus stating that on Tuesday the 8th of this month, there will be a celebration Koroma commemorating the 80th anniversary of UBLS/Nile. Now, this to us is a momentous occasion. It is not deserving of such short notice and placement during a week. And therefore, I have been sent to request that an occasion be set aside for later this year. The suggestion being, why do we not make this part of Lesotho's independence celebrations? Because this short notice excludes those who were Koroma from Zimbabwe, from Namibia, from Botswana, from Eswatini, to come and say, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful experience. And therefore, that is the answer that my ancestors gave me. I want to end by congratulating the organizers of this event. I want to congratulate the citizens of this rainbow nation. I want to say thank you very much, Lona Batoba GNU. Lastly, I want to say, halala ale lina la Lesotho le bokwe. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, all protocols observed. I would like to talk about acceptance, understanding, welcoming, and open hands. To do that, I'll tell my story. I had just finished my training as a nurse in the UK. My father had insisted I should go to university, and I had applied to Lesotho and to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone gave me an opening. I went to Sierra Leone. I couldn't do chemistry because they didn't have enough chemicals, so it was only the locals who were doing chemistry. So I took geography. But I met a Msutu guy at Faurabe. We haven't gotten there yet. And we talked. And I said, but I had applied to Lesotho as my first choice, but they never came back to me. He said, I know someone in the registrar's office. And within the first quarter of the year, I got accepted to Lesotho. I finished my year at Faura Bay, and I was very sure I was off. I got to Lesotho. I did my BSc in 3 years because they gave me an exemption. Your Majesty, I was there during your years. We were there together. When we were at now, acceptance and other things, most of the men from Zimbabwe had Basotho girlfriends. But patriarchy was in place because they policed our relationships as Zimbabwean women with any man. As a result, a lot of my brothers ended up marrying Basotho women, but there are very few of us who married Basotho men. But some of us looked around and found South Africans. When I'm talking of acceptance and openness, during that time, Zimbabwe was not free. 2 of my brothers were served with conscription papers, and they ran away to me in Lesotho. I was just a student, but they ran away to Lesotho. One of them ended up working for the electricity company. The other one got so swallowed in Lesotho married House Ntatli, had 2 sons with House Ntatli, and never went back home. My nephews, to me, are Basotho. They were born in Lesotho. They've grown up in Lesotho. One of the cultures strongly in them is the Lesotho cultures. And I'm happy because I'm a feminist, I don't mind. When I was at NAL, during vacation, again to talk about acceptance, I had 3 vacations, I had 2 vacations where I found that ububele from the Lesotho people. One vacation I worked as an assistant nursing tutor at Queen 2. The other vacation, because I come from an SDA family, I worked as a nursing sister at Maluti Hospital. During those times when I did those tasks, I never felt that I was an outsider. I never felt that I was an outsider. Now, some of these guys here, while we lived in Africa Hall or some other hall, they lived in a compound, huh? Yeah. With Father Michael Lapsley. Celebrations for things South Africa usually were done there. And House Booney taught me how to cook dikahari, the Lesotho way. And it was very good. I learned and I still do that. But one of the things also as Zimbabweans that we learned and adopted, which was very strange when we came to Lesotho, is the way of greeting, where people hug and kiss on the mouth. Yo, aibo, from Zimbabwe, you didn't do that to your mother, to your sister, to your brother. You did that to your lover. Now the Basotho, we were like, hey, hi. But guess what? We quickly imbibed it. But I think there were other benefits in those. Whatever. Also, the openness and acceptance of the Basotho people came to me through the Lesotho Communist Party, which then, Ntatekena. They had a delegation of young people they were sending to Eastern Europe, young Basotho people. I ended up in that delegation. To this day, I don't know why I ended up in that delegation. But I know also that my activism and my awareness was quite whatever. I was part of the vanguard when it was being done with Ajulu. But there was also, to me, I remember the trio. Ajulu, Kwenche, and Hango. I remember that trio. But also, some of the friendships that came to me from being there have lived on to be more than friendships. There are people who have become my sisters all those years, whether I see them once in 5 years or not, who have become mothers to my children, and I have become an aunt to their children, and I've become a mbuya to their grandchildren. Auspuni has constantly walked with me, and I remember an incident which I think she was crazy. I think her eldest daughter was 10, and she let me take the children by train from Maseru to Harare by train. I don't know what passport they were using. I query. Maybe it was a Lesotho passport. It couldn't have been South African passports. But to just end, some of these people that were in Lesotho, when I went back to Zimbabwe, after 2 years or 3 years of teaching at Kana High School in Tiatianeng, I went back to Zim. Remember, Zim had been, by then, when I finished at Roma, Zim was independent. And I remember the independence celebration at Netherlands Hall. Yeah? And I remember the raising of the flag was done outside. And Tenjiwe Mtinso was the representative of the ANC for that occasion. To me, again, an acceptance and an understanding to celebrate some other African countries' independence in that way. And I remember the moves that Gigi had there. Mean moves. Huh? But some of these guys followed me to Zim. And then I had been captured. I had been captured by one of them. So I lived in their exile community. And I remember very well Bratozi Saktu House. Huh? And I remember the many meals that were eaten in my house. But guess what? It was almost like Mzalas. Because what flowed, I don't know. I don't even know where I got enough glasses for the liquid to flow. I am grateful for having been at NAL, for the Basotho people, who some of them are no longer friends, but my family. And for me and my country people who experienced all that, will ever be grateful. Khotsong, Nala, Pula.
We got a message through Advocate Picodi this morning from Father Michael Lepsley. and we just really like to acknowledge. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but he sent a message of support. Most of you know Father Michael Lepsley, and Metogozi that referred to some of the gentlemen that lived very closely with Father Michael. And he really played quite an immense role. And he continues to do so even today, where he's got an institute looking at how you heal a nation, how you heal the soul of a people. So he continues to play a significant role in rebuilding our country and Southern Africa in general. As we also want to acknowledge you. You were at the forefront of that 1982 incident. And again, we say to your family, we really acknowledge that you're here, and we acknowledge the role that you played. It was quite fierce. When you hear the stories that you've told and your family have told, it was a real grueling experience. But thank God you're still here with us. And thank our ancestors that you're still here with us. We will now move to Metogozi. In fact, you reminded me as you were talking that after Zimbabwe's independence, 1980, I think when the first cabinet was constituted in Zimbabwe, we had a professor at the university. If my memory serves me well, it was Professor Masulunguru, if my memory serves me well. He came to Roma from the US, had a long American car. So one day at the university, suddenly an entourage of government vehicles arrived to fetch Prof to take him to Zimbabwe. So those are some of the contributions that happened at the University of Lesotho. Professor Sten Mudenge followed as well later, and many other students, Mashingaidze as well. They really, Ngara, so there's many of them. And indeed, Zimbabwe was an integral part of the Roma community. At this stage, I'd like to invite Ndate Pari Lohosha to also give us a message of support.
Motlotlei hloho ya naha ha go dumedisa re be re lebohele gore o teng kwano. Your Majesty the King, it's here, as I said, we are pleased that you are here. I think we should recognize and appreciate that South Africa would organize in the way they have and invited the head of state to convey a serious message. And this message is conveyed by South African citizens because they have deep feelings, deep appreciation of the contribution of Lesotho in their struggles. It probably doesn't come as an accident because at the 100th anniversary of the ANC that was held in Mangaung, Your Majesty, you pointed at a cow and ox in Mangaung to be slaughtered on that occasion. That reinforced the relationships, not only of the Basotho, but of King Lerotori, who was the secretary of the House of Traditional Leaders, when the ANC was formed in 1912. These relationships ran very deep, for it was in Modile, in the Free State, that King Motlomi in 1723 was born. Motlomi, the planter, and the father and the founder of the Basotho Nation, Morena Moshoeshoe, the binder, created conditions for the Basotho and the Basotho Nation to be a nation that will welcome peoples that were ravaged by Ifaka. Morena Moshoeshoe put in place an administrative leadership school in Modile. That school, that leadership school in Modile, is where Morena Moshoeshoe had to go and study. And Morena Skuku. And Morena Moshoeshoe and Morena Skukuni, who dialogue in the northern parts at the boundary of Mpumalanga and then Lesotho. So would Morena Moshoeshoe go and converse in Kamsha. What is that mountain there? Mhlaba Mountain in KwaZulu-Natal, where they would actually discuss issues of governance. The gesture today is reigniting that system of governance, that system of relationships that these three founders of different peoples conversed and had to discuss about the future of this region. Morena Moshoeshoe planted a particular philosophy that we have to look into and answer the question that Advocate Ramatloli has asked. The question of what to do. What do we do? Not philosophize, but what do we do? And I argue that in Morena Moshoeshoe, a man who had never seen a white man, a man that had never seen a computer in his life, born in 1723 and died in 1813, shy of 100 years, said about leadership. He didn't say a leader, he said a responsible leader. He defined what leadership means and said a responsible leader. And in saying a responsible leader, he said, pursues peace, builds stakeholders, organizes stakeholders, focuses on productivity, and guarantees intergenerational value. That future generations will be better. And Moshoeshoe, the binder, ensured and guaranteed that future generations will be better. And those generations were part of the people that ate his grandfather back, the cannibals. And when the cannibals were brought to council, sure to be killed, Morena Moshoeshoe said, these are the graves of my grandfather. I'm not going to desecrate them. He understood why cannibalism was there. He gave the cannibals swords and seed, horse and seed to go and plow and plant. As we answer the question, what should be done? Where our populations, our young populations, have been converted into cannibals, what should be done is to grant them the instrument that Morena Moshoeshoe found in inviting the French missionaries, bringing in education. The first university in South Africa was in Besaba, arranged by King Moshesh. It was ravaged by the Afrikaners because they felt threatened. That school in Berseba was a school where people studied, but the Boers ran it down to undermine the philosophy of Morena Moshesh, which he was taught by Morena Moshesh. By the way, Morena Moshesh, his parents, by the way, Morena Moshesh was one of a kind, by the way. By the time, he was not king then, but he was a chief. By the time his parents brought him to Morena Moshesh, he had killed 5 people. He was under 25. And when he got there, Morena Moshesh asked him, Morena Moshesh, what ubata in? Morena Moshesh said, I want medicine for power. I want power. And I want that kind of medicine for power. And Morena Moshesh said, Moshesh, there is no medicine for power. Power rests in knowing yourself, knowing the people that you work with, and loving them unconditionally. That message that Morena Moshesh got was the key message for building the nation. He abolished and never exercised capital punishment. Even when Mukaila had gone into the royal house and seen going around there, and Moshesh was at the mountain, and when Mukaila was brought to court, Morena Moshesh called him at night and said, come, let's talk. He said to him, tomorrow, be armed to the teeth when you come and appear before court. And then the men were seated there. And as they were seated, Mukaila came, gear ready for war. And when he arrived, the man presented his case that he went into the king's houses, one of the king's house, and the punishment would have been meted. But no one would confront Mukaila. And when Morena Moshesh adjudicated the case, he said, in the morning, I see many of you coming out of my houses here. And that now you have caught Mukaila. You think all of you are clean. No, I see you all the time. So Mukaila was forgiven. There were specific messages that Morena Moshesh pointed out. Cannibalism was actually abolished by that great act of saying, these are the graves of my grandfather. The behavior and pretenses by different people were dealt with by Morena Moshesh, forgiving Mukaila for having gone into one of his houses. Now, when you study Morena Moshesh, Letlama, and you study Morena Moshesh, the planter, and put the mirror before us as nations of the Southern African region, and ask the question, who is a leader? In Morena Moshesh, we find the answer that a responsible leader, it doesn't just say a leader, a responsible leader is one who pursues peace, builds stakeholders, pursues productivity, and guarantees intergenerational value, ensuring that the nation will live and live and live forever. This is the central message and the gesture that the South Africans, citizens, are saying to you, Your Majesty. We need the philosophy of Moshomi. We need the philosophy of Morena Moshesh in order to build that intergenerational value for centuries to come and answer the question that Advocate Drama is asking about what is responsible leadership. my leader, that we call everybody, the question must be asked, is this my leader a responsible leader? The answer is no. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ended in this kind of situation. We are going for probably a national dialogue advocate, if it happens. The question that we have to ask is, who is a responsible leader? And the gesture that the South African delegation has made to the Majesty is a big responsibility. We need another ox that should be slaughtered when we try to answer that question. Let me conclude by saying that Pius and the university, UBLS, and now has been the mechanism by which we seek to recreate Modile and the legacy of Modena Mshweshwe, so that through that, as a people, as a nation, we can actually guarantee intergenerational value. The last point to make about Moshomi, having not seen a computer, talked about integrated planning, integrated reporting. Without integrated planning and integrated reporting, we'll always fool ourselves. Because one will lie that way, the other one will lie that way, and that way, and that way, and we'll never see an integrated picture. And that's what actually causes a lot of problems for us. So by going back to Moshomi, colleagues, by going back to Modena Moshomi, who was in the Free State, by going back to his philosophy, as South Africans and as Lesotho and Zimbabwe and everybody, because Modena Moshomi went up to Kenya as a medicine man, as a philosopher, and as a leader. We need that African wisdom to re-establish ourselves as a people, as a nation. Let me thank ourselves as South Africans and feel the warmth I had here in South Africa. Your Majesty, I've been a statistician general of South Africa for 17 years, a director general, in a country not of my birth, but a reciprocation of South Africa's wisdom in seeing us as a peoples and one people. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It is with great honor and much respect that the McLean family shares their respect for the Kingdom of Lesotho. In 1977, the McLean family moved to Lesotho. For the next decade, Roma would become our home. It was a critical and turbulent time in South Africa, and this spilled over the borders. The National University of Lesotho became the epicenter of student activism and political consciousness for Basotho, South African, Zimbabwean, and many other African students. The history of Lesotho is one of perseverance and courage. The generosity and bravery of the people of your kingdom were evident throughout the decades. This did not come without consequences. We all remember December the 9th, 1982, and the brutality of the Maseru massacre, which resulted in tragic loss of lives of Basotho and South Africans alike. This was not an isolated event. We know there were many of these cross-border raids. At a personal level, our family enjoyed the beauty, the bravery, and the bounty of your kingdom. The children built lifelong ties to your beautiful country. Many of our dearest friends today came from our time in Lesotho. Our father, Professor W.T. McLean, was deeply honored to serve at the behest of your father, King Mshweshwe II, on the Pardons Committee on the prerogative of mercy which advised the king on the exercise of clemency with the king's powers in the area exercised in accordance with their advice. In an intergenerational cycle, our father would have the honor of having His Majesty King Letsie III, a student of his in Roma. Our mother, May McLean, became a mother to many, opening our hearts and home to all. The bounty and beauty of your nation for us was unsurpassed. As a family, we enjoyed the incredible topography and being surrounded by the snow-peaked Maluti Mountains. In conclusion, as a family, we are eternally grateful for the hospitality of the Basotho people, and we share a deep sense of love for their language, culture, and traditions. Many thanks from Mayor McLean, Charlotte, Ketiwe, Temba McLean, Khotsong Pulanala.
I'd also like to read a message from the Badil family. You all will remember Professor Badil as well, who was at the National University. It says, it was with deep sincerity that my family and I wish to express a heartfelt appreciation of the kindness and compassion you expressed at the memorial service of my late husband, Professor John Badil. We were deeply touched by both Minister Mahau's message from you and Dr. Badil Hotla's and Suwai Santo's appreciation of John's contribution to UBLS, its staff and students, indeed to King Moshoeshoe II's master's degree that was conferred on him. He was well respected by all his students at Roma, and our humble home was a place of safety for all of our beloved students. Many of them attended the memorial service and shared fond memories of our time together at Roma, where we met and formed our family, and enjoyed many experiences of love and respect that was shown to us. The South African students by the people of Lesotho remains embossed in my heart. Our mountain kingdom, kindness, peace, and authenticity are words that describe the experience of life in Lesotho at that time. A recent and nostalgic visit Lesotho attended to attend Date Simmons' 80th birthday in January this year confirmed the essence of Lesotho's inherent African spirit of peace, love, and resilience. As South Africans, the people of your kingdom are its most valued asset. They welcomed us with grace and love. They participated in our struggle for freedom and shared their own Ubuntu essence with us, even at the cost of their own lives. We never felt rejected or detached. We felt at home in the beautiful mountain kingdom that nurtured and held us together and left an indelible mark in our hearts and minds. The familial warmth is still alive and well. Thank you, Your Majesty, and all your people for accepting us as neighbors and prodigal sons and daughters. You all committed yourselves to our well-being and safety. May the universe in all its glory bless you and the people of your kingdom always. Rea leboha, ka kgotso, pula le nala. May your indomitable spirit continue to ground you in peace and love. From Nozipo Badil and the family. Thank you.
Chairperson, Your Excellency, King Letsie III, I greet everybody, protocol observed. I do not know why I am here. I must be honest. Because I was phoned on Thursday by Medes Manzana, who said, you are invited to the function which is organized by the former students of National University of Lesotho. And because His Majesty the King, Letsia III, will be there, I'm not expecting you to say no. Then, yesterday, I was phoned by Ndate Santo, who said, oh, by the way, we want you not only to be there, but to share the experience which the mine workers, in particular those who were organized under the National Union of Mine Workers and the National University of Lesotho. Yes, there was a relationship immediately after the formation of the National Union of Mine Workers. The relationship was strengthened during the strike of 1987, when the mining industry, the Chamber of Mines, and the South African government asked the government of Lesotho then to allow a mass recruitment of Basotho mine workers to come to South Africa to destroy the strikes which was taking place in South Africa. Why the Basotho? While there were different tribes, different nations coming from Southern Africa. Then we had a meeting as executive of NUM. We said, this is going to be possible when those mine workers who will be recruited from Lesotho, there will be a blood in the hostels. What should we do? By then, we didn't have either a good relationship with the government of Lesotho and or government of South Africa. The only institution we could have thought about it was the National University of Lesotho. We did send a delegation to the university to say, hey, assist us stopping that mass recruitment. And fortunately, we did get a good reception. The lecturers, the staff, the students went all over the country. They stopped that mass recruitment. Others had already even been stopped at the border gates. The reason was simple, because Chamber of Mines, they thought that the strike in the mining industry will take only 48 hours. After 48 hours, it will be over because of the hostile systems. They were saying it's not going to be possible for the National Union of Mine Workers to command a strike which will be engaging people from the different countries with the different political backgrounds. But after a week, they realized that the strike cannot be broken. So I want also to thank the university, the staff, which took place by that time. However, we had a long now working relationship with the university. Some of the graduates, when they left, like Molefe, they were employed by NUM. Sien Litele, they were employed by NUM, and quite a number of them, they worked for the National Union of Mine Workers. When you ask me the relationship and my expectation, today you are here, you are all graduates, and the University of Lesotho produced executives of the government in South Africa, and also produced the executive within the government of Lesotho. If you ask me, my expectation, more so because mine workers didn't only end up by honoring Nelson Mandela, by being life president of NUM, by doing this and that. Mine workers made possible financial for ANC, SACP to be able to perform some of their tasks. Mine workers, National Union of Mine Workers as well, made possible in some of the political parties in Lesotho to take off in order to make sure that the military government goes. The mine workers also made sure in Mozambique that ultimately Frelimo will defeat Renam. Mine workers also, the National Union of Mine Workers, contributed and made sure that SWAPO wins the elections. Practically, I can say to you, in Mozambique, we organize not only finances to assist the Frelimo, but also organize minibuses, more than 300, which went across Mozambique to take rural people to go to the elections, as well as in Namibia. So, during our organizing days, the present president of South Africa then was the general secretary of NUM. He said to me, Mushara, wabona black mine workers are dying like flies and buried like dogs. And if you ask me, I would say those words should have come to me, because I knew I did bury some of the mine workers who died in the mining industry on the line of duty. You will be taken out with the attire, dirty as you are. You will go to the mortuary. From the mortuary, you will be put into a black coffin, and you will be buried in Tuhlwane, Thabo Mvelko. I knew. But today, if you ask me, the mine workers are still dying like flies, buried like dogs at the rural areas. They are at home. When they were retrenched, their families, their wives left them. They are going up and down. They are suffering from occupational disease. Nobody cares about them. But here is the dynamic. He is my witness, life witness. More than 47 billion rands is still roaming in South Africa, called unclaimed wages. Those poor mine workers from the rural areas, it's very difficult to access that amount of money. There is no political will, either from South African government and or the Lesotho government. More so because National Union of Mine Workers made sure that in the Lesotho government, they have got members, whatever any government which ran Lesotho, there was somebody who was a former leader, a member of National Union of Mine Workers. We can't talk about South Africa. South Africa, we have got a president. We have got a Minister of Minerals and Energy. We can name and name and name. Now, here is my question, ladies and gentlemen. I listened to Ndate Padile-Hosa here. Talked about Kim Mhloli, philosopher. You have gone through universities. I will respect you for that. But what are you doing except to fight one another? We, blacks in particular, when we have got differences, we are so brutal to one another. Why? Why? I am saying to you, I raised this issue of unclaimed wages to both governments until one day I went to the king, crying, and said, "Batho ba ba hao, ke batho ba jwang?" When you raise this issue, rest assured you will be isolated. I am not saying people are not working, but to be quite honest, we have got more than 47 billion rands and for which a sizable amount of money is coming from the mine workers. And two governments cannot find their way as to whether how to deal with that. I'm not attacking anybody. I have never been in government. I would be able to criticize if, because time and again, when other comrades are failing to answer my question, they will say to me, "You don't understand." I said, "Okay, make me to understand." You see, could we use our contacts, our wisdom, for the poor mine workers who are coming from all Southern Africans, who have left their monies here? Fortunately, even though we are talking about corruption, that one is still safe. Let's make it sure it goes back to their owners. I couldn't believe when one day I was phoned by somebody to say, "We are from the funeral of somebody who died because of occupational disease. Family had to hire a coffin. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, the coffin took a body from the mortuary. When that body arrives at the graveyard. The body was taken out. COVID went back to. This is what is happening today in the rural areas for the mine workers who left their monies. Before I left the National Union of Mine Workers, we had well over 200,000 cases, individuals who were diagnosed with occupational diseases, who were struggling to get their monies. But here is irony. I want to make an example, diagnosed in 1987. By then, the law says you will be paid at the rate which you were when you were last working in the mining industry. Now, you can imagine the rate, how much I was earning, and what is that now? Comrade Ramatluri, unfortunately, you left the government and the Ministry of Minerals before we can sit down. You see, because I thought that maybe among other people you may be able to have my ear. So, as I said, I don't want to accuse anybody. If there are things which are not going well, I'm not going to exclude myself. Maybe I didn't play my role properly. I thank you.
Sit down. Dulan fast. Dulan fast. You can sit down. So let me, first of all, say how happy, delighted I am to be with you today, to see faces that I haven't seen for many years, and also to be here and share with you a shared history. To be here to share a moment of joy and happiness. We are also, if I may be allowed to say so, celebrating lifelong friendships. Friendships that have been molded, nurtured by that shared history. A history that I am truly grateful for, that I truly appreciate. Bomme le bondade, libitsong la Basotho bohle, I would like to welcome with appreciation all the sentiments that have been expressed by the speakers who have spoken before me. I welcome on behalf of Basotho your words of gratitude, where you have been thanking, and I'm sure you will continue to thank Basotho for their warm hospitality, for their protection, and for their friendship, particularly in difficult times. So we are truly, on behalf of Basotho, appreciate the acknowledgement. We appreciate those words of gratitude. Yes, we did play host to many exiles coming from different liberation movements. But in all honesty, what choice did we have? The founding liberation movement of this country, the African National Congress, when it was formed, Basotho were well represented through their leaders. And Basotho, through their leaders, were instrumental in the formation of the ANC. The ANC, of course, as time went on, spawned other liberation movements. But as Basotho, we played a role, an important role, in the creation of that founding liberation movement. So, because of that history, there was no way we could turn our back to people or members of the liberation movements and the liberation movement that we created. We could not turn our back on those people who needed our assistance, who needed our protection. As small as we were, vulnerable as we were, we had to stand up and protect our friends, protect our neighbors, protect members of the liberation movements. And of course, because of that history, I think it was natural for the young exiles and their leaders in the movements to see Lesotho as a natural safe haven. And we are glad that we played that role. And we are very proud as Basotho that we were given the opportunity because of our history, because of our geography and the relationships that we have in the region to host and give protection to those who needed protection so that they can continue to fight the good fight. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also say that over the years, we as a country, as things have developed, as people have grown, and as South Africa was liberated, even when Zimbabwe was liberated, we have become very proud of the role that those young men and women who were young then, not so young now, have played in the development of their countries, politically, economically, and otherwise. We are indeed very proud of you all. This story is a story that we should tell to our children, we should tell to our grandchildren, so that they can also be inspired and motivated to protect and nurture this legacy of friendship, solidarity, and peaceful coexistence. Sometimes I avoid talking about things that may make me cry. As I grow older, I find myself crying when I speak. I'll try not to. Because, yes, as you have heard from the voices that have spoken before me, we have shared, you in this room and others, many others who are not here, we have shared many moments of joy and happiness in Lesotho. But we also acknowledge and cannot forget that we have shared moments of sadness, moments of frustration, moments of deep and hurtful sorrow. Together, we have mourned the loss of life of our friends, of our loved ones, of our comrades, at the hands of the tyrannical monster that we called apartheid. That we should not forget. That we bled together, we mourned together, we wept together. And that brings us together. It strengthens our bonds of friendship. Because we laughed together, we celebrated together, and we also mourned together during those moments of sorrow. So this is a very important moment for me personally, and a very important moment for Basotho. Ndati Mtlazi and others have talked about the challenges that as the two nations we face. Challenges in South Africa, challenges in Lesotho. What I would like to do now is to plant a seed in your hearts and minds to see if this occasion can be used as a beginning of building a coalition of the willing Europe is talking about coalition of the willing. Let's create our own coalition of the willing, our own coalition of action, our own coalition of finding solutions to these challenges. That we are facing today in South Africa, in Lesotho, in Eswatini, in Botswana, in Zimbabwe, in Namibia. Let's see if we can build a coalition of the willing, a coalition for action. You've talked a lot, and rightly so, about NUL, UBLS, UBBS, Pius XII. That's the institution that gave you intellectual life for many of you. But the question is, we often gather as former students of NUL or UBLS, but what are we doing? What are we doing to help that treasured institution? Because it is also going through challenges. We want it to grow. We want it to once again become a beacon of quality higher education, a beacon of scholarship, a beacon of intellectual development, and a beacon for gathering of knowledge. So let's see, all of us. There are many of us. In this room is just a fraction, a tiny fraction of those who went through that campus. So at that level, again, let us see, with this coalition that we're trying to build now, what can be done to assist wherever we can, so that NUL, the name of NUL, continues for many years to come. Mutusi mentioned, and I think Mutusi was president of SRC. What? Yeah. Secretary General. Okay. But he mentioned that he only got, or some of you may have got, just recently, notification that the university is celebrating its 80th anniversary this coming Tuesday. And this, for me, as Chancellor, is embarrassing. I'm saddened. But we have an opportunity to rectify that. I would like your permission to go back home and talk to the university and talk to others and see whether we can, as NUL, UBLS alumni, our families and friends, can gather in Lesotho to celebrate together the 80th anniversary of that institution. I was already thinking about that, about the fact that there should be a second round of this session. But I was looking at it 12 months. But Daisy said, why 12 months? Yes, have you forgotten? So she said, why 12 months? So maybe there's an opportunity in October, as we celebrate our independence, to see whether we can gather and have another celebration. A celebration of the institution, and on top of that, celebration of friendship, solidarity, unity, and peaceful coexistence. So I did say I was going to be short. I'm sorry if I talked longer than I should have, but I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for coming, and thank you all for what you are doing and what you have done in the past. I often, before I sit down, let me mention, believe, the English have a saying that ignorance is bliss. I agree. If it wasn't of my ignorance when I got to Roma in 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, associating with these terrorists, that ignorance helped me to form this strong bond, this relationship. Because if I had otherwise been the wiser, I could have invoked Sesotho saying nonyana, yotlelwa, lesesasa. I could have been fearing that I could be collateral damage. But because of ignorance, I just went and enjoyed the friendship. It is only years later that I knew what these guys were up to. So, really, ignorance is bliss. And I do appreciate, and I'm thanking my ignorance for that. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, rest of the afternoon. Khotsong, pula, na.
Mine is quite short. The politicians have spoken, the historians have spoken, the statisticians have spoken. What else can I say other than to thank His Majesty King Letsie III for graciously allowing us to have him today. It's no small gesture. We might have met earlier, but it so happened that we're meeting now. Perhaps it's the reason why we're meeting now. We thank you, Your Majesty, for gracing this occasion. I thank you who are here, who have made this event eventful, even though at times they've been ungovernable. Unleashing your skills of the youth, still as students. I'm happy to say that you have not lost any of those skills. I sincerely thank you. But also allow me to say, as I'm thanking everybody who's here, that we have had a master class in human relations, in humanity, in self-mastery. And I think this master class is what we're living with from this occasion. But also allow me to borrow from King Letsie when he said that we need to have a coalition of the willing. Perhaps just to add a little bit further and say, for so long, our continent has been seen as a dark continent, as a poor continent. And there's no reason why, because we've got all the resources. Let this be a wake-up call. Let the African giant rise. We refused to be dehumanized. We refused to be victims. And indeed, we are victors. Let us then use this occasion to make sure that we do re-energize ourselves. The 1887 Berlin Conference is a thing of the past. Let us have our own coalition of the willing. And to do that, we need to know ourselves. The questions have been rightly put. And that party has also given us how to deal with those questions. And the king, a true product of Professor McLean and Tony Hesse and Umesh Kumar and Midad Rolamira, they would have been proud. And Rambe.
And John Badil, yes.
John Badil. Comrades, I don't want to stand between you and Tina, but all I have to say is that I must also thank the organizing committee for having done an excellent job, for having brought us together on this occasion. I also want to thank the hosts, Pratos and Sis Baba, for giving us, this venue, wonderful venue, which is an indicator that he no longer has a problem of the land question. And also let me thank the official photographers, Pastor Bob Mtsisi, the catering staff, and everybody who has been able to come. The issue was to be broad and be inclusive, and not only confine it to members of the oldest liberation movement. It was the time now is to come together and bury our differences and build one African movement. The attempt was then to bring all of us together so that we can say, Amandla. Thank you.